This is Levittown. All yours for $58. You're a lucky fellow, Mr. Veteran. Uncle Sam and the world's largest builder have made it possible for you to live in a charming house in a delightful community without having to pay for them with your eye teeth.
The day after this ad ran, 1,400 eager families lined up in a single day to buy a 4-room house from Bill Levitt. People wanted convenient, affordable housing, and they wanted it now. To fill the need, Bill Levitt started producing homes like Henry Ford produced Model Ts, simple, durable, and inexpensive. Americans poured into the new suburban communities springing up on the crabgrass frontier. Here, people found their American dreams. Prosperity allowed new suburbanites to fill their houses with new furniture and the latest appliances, and to pursue lives built around home and family. Backed by a thriving economy and GI Bill benefits, Americans began to marry younger and faster than ever before. And once they married, they began to have children. Lots of children. Lots and lots of children. The baby boomers, as they're called, became the largest generation in the nation's history. They would grow up in the most affluent society in the history of the world and share their homes with an invention that would transform American civilization. Retreating into their new playrooms and dens, Americans spent their evenings with their eyes glued to the set. By the 1960s, Americans on average spent more time watching television than doing anything else but sleep and work.
The movie theaters, drama, museums, all these things, it's not that important to, after work, to now jump in the car and drive 30 miles for the second time that day, to have some sort of social or cultural life that was in the city. TV would take the cultural life and send it to you.
From the very beginning, advertising was the life's blood of television, which was unsurpassed in its ability to sell standardized products to a mass audience. Game shows like The Price is Right and the $64,000 Question brought the flood of new brand-name goods into American homes. Soon, more advertising dollars were spent on television than on any other medium. Television shows like Ozzie and Harriet and Father Knows Best reflected Americans' interest in home and family. They showed Americans what the perfect family should look like: a strong father with a good job, a sweet mother who cooked and took care of the home, and well-behaved, if sometimes mischievous, children. With Dad able to earn enough money on his own to provide for the whole family, more and more Americans came to believe that a woman's place was in the home, supporting her husband and caring for her children.
After we got out of the service and married, our generation was expected to stay home, keep the house, and raise the children, which is what a majority of us did. A lot of the fellas went to school on the GI Bill. We bought homes, bought appliances, sent our children to dancing school.
At the same time, more women were working than ever before. But employers usually paid them less, reasoning that men were the real breadwinners, so women didn't need an equal wage.
There was much less dissatisfaction with the inequity in pay initially at the end of the war. In part because most women agreed generally that the husband was to be the breadwinner, and the ideal family was being shown to them in the magazines, in the newspapers, in Life magazine, for example, and on the television.
Many suburban women were pleased with their lives. They found constructive outlets working for the PTA, church groups, and other organizations. But beneath the surface of happy conformity was a growing undercurrent of unrest.
Companies which made a big profit selling us all those washing machines, dryers, freezers, and second cars were overselling us on the bliss of domesticity to sell us more things.
In 1963, Betty Friedan's book, The Feminine Mystique, would help expose the hidden problems of American housewives and help fuel the feminist movement of the 1960s. But in the 1950s, all appeared well with the American family. The same could not, however, be said about developments elsewhere in the world. During World War II, the United States and the Soviet Union had been allies against Nazi Germany. But after the war, that alliance quickly disintegrated. Determined to protect itself from future invasion from the West and to advance communism, the Soviet Union, at the end of World War II, took control of countries in Eastern Europe, and an iron curtain descended across the continent.
At the present moment, in world history, nearly every nation must choose between alternative ways of life. The choice is too often not a free one. One way of life is based upon the will of the majority and is distinguished by free institutions, representative government, free elections, guarantees of individual liberty, freedom of speech and religion, and freedom from political oppression. The second way of life is based upon the will of a minority, forcibly imposed upon the majority. It relies upon terror and oppression, a controlled press and radio, fixed elections, and the suppression of personal freedoms. I believe that it must be the policy of the United States to support free peoples who are resisting attempted subjugation by armed minorities or by outside pressures.
Fearing Soviet aggression, President Truman and Congress adopted a policy of containment, the objective of which was to prevent further Soviet or communist expansion. To combat communism, the United States embarked upon an unprecedented involvement in world affairs. In 1947, Truman persuaded Congress to send $400 million to Greece and Turkey to prevent communist takeovers. That same year, the Marshall Plan began a multi-billion-dollar program in economic aid to help nations in Western Europe get back on their feet and prevent the spread of communism. The United States also set up military bases around the world and entered into military alliances with Latin American, European, and Asian nations. In 1949, the United States organized the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, its first peacetime military alliance with Europe since the American Revolution. That same year, China's long and bitter civil war ended when communist armies, led by Mao Zedong, defeated Chiang Kai-shek's American-backed nationalists. The world's most populous nation was now under communist control. On a map, more than half of the world now looked red.
The communist-led North Korean army plunged across the line which separated it from free South Korea. And now, once again, the soldier was on foreign soil, making his soldier's way through the kind of troubles which had always beset his brothers.
When communist North Korea invaded South Korea in 1950, the Cold War turned hot. Truman sent American troops into Korea and anticipated a quick victory. But when troops from the United States and its UN allies got too close to the Chinese border, 33 Chinese divisions poured into North Korea and pushed them back to the 38th parallel. Alarmed by Truman's apparent inability to win the war, Americans elected Dwight D. Eisenhower president in 1952. Threatening the use of nuclear force, Eisenhower prodded the North Koreans into signing a ceasefire in 1953. By then, more than 54,000 Americans had lost their lives. Determined not just to contain, but to roll back communist expansion, President Eisenhower wanted to increase American military strength. But Ike also had promised to reduce government spending. how was he to increase the military without running up the national debt? Eisenhower found the answer by shifting from costly troops and conventional weapons to a reliance upon air power and nuclear weapons. This, said Secretary of State John Foster Dulles, would provide more bang for the buck. A new policy of massive retaliation threatened the Soviet Union and China with nuclear obliteration should they attack the United States or its allies. Afraid that the United States' nuclear advantage would put them at the mercy of the United States, the Soviet Union accelerated its own missile program. The nuclear arms race was on. Fear soared as each country rushed to develop and test hydrogen bombs, 1,000 times more powerful than the atomic bombs the United States had dropped on Japan at the end of World War II. The arms race between Soviets and Americans would last for close to 40 years. By the time the Cold War ended in 1991, it had cost trillions of dollars and created enough nuclear weapons to destroy the world many times over.